All right, I'm here to answer questions, and there's a lot of them. Pretty surprised how many there are. Let's dig in. First one is, here's my question: is learning other musicians' performance an effective way to improve? For instance, taking time to learn brain dance note for note. Ooh, note for note. Yeah, that's a big challenge. I know I transcribed every single note for you guys, but yeah, I would say that's not a practice that I do anymore. I did at one time. Well, it's not a practice I do directly, meaning that okay, basically what you're getting from learning a performance note for note is you're embodying that player, you're embodying their coordination, you're trying to program yourself along those lines, but you're also gaining control over each stroke and becoming conscious of that. So I think the point is to directly embody the players that you love, the music that you love, really. And then also you're learning to gain control over very small details. And that has not gone away from me. Like that I do daily, every single day. Slowing things down and saying, okay, how much control do I really have over everything that I'm playing? And you can start to sense when it gets out of control, because you'll get lost in the sauce, as they say. You know, you'll go off on a tangent, and that's important to do, but it's, you know, as a professional musician, you're going to need to be consistent enough for everyone in the band, as well as, you know, performing in front of crowds and being able to recreate those moments that were originally created. And if you're only ever improvising, then you're probably not going to develop that mode of being able to recite. And then I'd say, you know, mostly for beginners and intermediates, learning something note for note is going to be crucial. As you get more advanced, you assimilate that practice in a different way, and you still work on things note for note. It's just more catered to your specific band, your specific style and patterns, yada yada. My questions for yourself is regarding the fluidity and progression of the drums in the songs you produce and appear on. For some time, myself and my guitarist friend have struggled to compose a transition to different sections of an instrumental that, for one, feel fluid and natural to slip into, yet sound sufficiently different from the last section, both rhythmically and melodically. How do you find the inspiration and direction to guide a composition into different sections as you do, completely changing the feel of drum track and keeping a song's momentum? Well, that's a big question. I would say the number one thing that can tie a song together for instrumental music is a time signature. That's the most basic one. The most basic tool that you could use is the whole song's in 7/4, and therefore the feel will be generally the same. But I utilize methods like basing things around a clave, basing metric modulations around a clave. That really helps. But yeah, the inspiration part and direction to guide a composition, I mean, that's feel. That's going to be personalized, man. That's going to be your mark that you want to put on the song, where you're feeling it should go. And that does come from having experience doing that. So Learning tools too, listening to music. You learn little isms that can help, like a drum fill. That's the most basic one to make a transition smooth. That's actually what the drummer is best at. And especially with these prog compositions, a lot of them are done in the box nowadays, therefore they can get very section based. And I tell the guys in Animals this too, like, sometimes it drives me crazy how sectional things can be. Like, okay, we have this section that starts on the one and ends on, right before the one. Everything starts on the one. Everything's like a block, and I'm supposed to make it feel like this arc. So that's one of the challenges that I have with prog. Yeah, transition, you're saying in different sections of an instrumental that feel fluid. It doesn't always have to feel fluid too. It can be a disruption to the flow that is like, what the fuck was that? Just some crazy line that's all of a sudden throwing everything off, and now you're in a different section. It could be that too. We're talking creative stuff here, so it's like you first have to learn the rule book and learn to play with those rules within the rule book, and learn to create some order in the song, enough structure. But after that, you also realize that when you look out into the world, it doesn't always match up with the scripture. Meaning that if you listen to music, then it doesn't always follow this rule book. And sometimes that's what's cool about certain pieces of music. So, they always say, like, learn the rule book and then throw it away. I think it's important to constantly go back to the rule book and try to retain structures. That's definitely important for music. But yeah, break the rules too, man. So my question is, how can I become a professional drummer? I played for almost 10 years now, and I'm 16, and I'm asking myself, how would I make drum my job, but I don't know where to start What was your journey to become the famous drummer you are today? Well, yeah, around 14. I started when I was 8, so you started when you're 6. You got a little bit of a head start on me there. Around 14, my mentor, Joe Sellens, got me pretty serious into wanting to be a professional drummer. So I just practiced. I wanted to be one of the best, and that, I think, was the biggest driver for me, as well as just overall interest and passion. But I mean, there's so many ways to be a professional drummer. You could just be, the studio guys don't really exist anymore. No new ones, at least. Touring drummer, a clinician. I mean, that's really tough, man. I don't know how to answer that. I feel like I definitely had some luck involved, although I definitely felt like I had earned it as well. So, I mean, not everyone makes it, man. So, just all you can do is your best. Do your best to improve, to be the best drummer you can, and be precise on what your goal is, what your specific goal is. Do you want to be a pocket guy? Do you want to be a chops guy? Do you want to be a progressive guy, a very brainiac guy, or do you want to be a total feel guy? Do you want to be a polished drummer? Do you want to be hella raw? Like, I want all of it. So I've realized that that's just who I am, so therefore I require an excess amount of time to dedicate. How long do you typically spend on a sticking pattern to create all your personal variations of it and bring it into muscle memory? Well, it's not usually a set amount of time. I used to do that. I used to schedule in that fashion, which I think can be very helpful. But then at a certain point, I learned that, I would get really burnt out on certain things and start to lose interest and it would really impact my motivation. So I kind of do it by feel. I do it by, whenever I'm getting bored, whenever I'm getting sick of doing that same pattern, I move on or take a little break. And that seems to really help bring those into muscle memory. Because I can do it every day, I have a pad set up right over here, and, all the time I'm walking by there and I'm working on certain sticking patterns. I've got a bunch of new ones that I just came up with. I call them butterflies, but they're basically symmetrical patterns based off of single stroke rolls and different rates. So I've been working on those, kind of obsessing with them lately, and I'll do that. I'll go through periods where I obsess with a sticking pattern, and I'll just really sit there, and I won't try to push the speed on it, because I know that speed will come once it really penetrates my consciousness. I don't know how else to put it. Once it really becomes a part of me, becomes second nature, and my hands are just clean effortlessly. So, yeah. And create all your personal variations of it. Listen, the creating variations is important, but if you're working on 100 patterns and you're not really embedding any of them deeply in your consciousness, it's counterproductive, because you're spreading yourself ultra thin. What you want to do is acquire a skill set that is there to stay. And to do that, you have to kind of focus in on that skill set for a set period of time. It could be a week, it could be several weeks, several months, it could be several years too. Like, how much do you really want to master this pattern? So I would say the variations kind of come like, it's creativity, it's thinking, oh, well, what if I did this with the pattern now? What if I put it in triplets, put the 7 pattern sticking that I have in triplets now? Okay, what happens if I try to hear it in septuplets? That's a 7 pattern, right? So, like, those things will naturally happen over time. And they should, too. It should not only be a response, or it should not only be an attempt to be creative, but a response to getting bored with the pattern. Take the same pattern and put it in a lot of different contexts and placements. And making variations of those is the way to go, because it's going to strengthen if you're making a set of patterns all based around one thing, then what you're doing is strengthening all the other ones. You're making a group, and anytime you play any of those patterns within that group, you're revivifying that group of patterns and recalling it, from your desktop, so to speak. So the more often you're doing that, recalling those patterns in some regard, the more proficient you'll become at them. The more interwoven your patterns are, the less work you'll have to do to maintain it, right? So, is practice pad work essential to progressing on the drums? I almost never do pad work because of how boring it is, and I have access to a drum kit 24/7. You gonna rub it in my face, huh? You got access to a drum kit 24/7. Alright. Well, big man on the block here. Okay, buddy. Who's this? Marshall. Yeah, okay, Marshall. I mean, dude, I've always said, like, you know, you want to calibrate your hands to the feel of a drum set. You know, it does not feel the same as a pad. That being said, what I've realized is pad work can be useful for honing in on sticking patterns, because if I'm on the kit, the likelihood I'll be distracted by all the toys I have on my kit is so much greater. So, I mean, if you have access 24/7 and you can, you know, only work on sticking patterns only on your snare, then I say go for it. You know, if I had a snare in here instead of in my apartment, my first of all, my neighbors would hate me, but I would love it. Okay, this one's from Sunny. One thing that's always given me trouble when playing double bass is maintaining balance. Does this amount primarily to low core strength, and do you have any exercises behind the kit other than simply playing more to stabilize one's core when playing complex patterns? Single stroke rolls aren't as difficult, but I think it is because of the repetitive alternation. Yeah, balance is huge. I personally have a little bit of a balance issue myself, so I might not be the best person to ask this, but I'm aware of why I have a bit of an balance issue, and that's because I sit on the edge of my seat. And I do that so that I have more leg drive, more like quad activation or whatever. If I'm further back on the seat, if a bit of my legs are on the seat, then that actually helps balance and stabilize me. But I can't push my legs as far down and use as much power. I lose power because I'm losing the ability to use the weight of my leg. So, yeah. Posture's huge. Yeah, of course, the single strokes are going to be the easiest because you're constantly alternating. But yeah, if you're having more complex patterns and start and stop, then you'll probably resort to burying the beater, which is what I do. You know, I don't get as open of a kick drum sound when I'm doing that, but you know, whether that's audible to anyone ever, I've never heard someone say, "Yeah, are you burying the beaters?" I feel like, yeah, I can hear that. And I feel like live, even in the studio, it's really difficult to tell the difference between a buried beater and someone utilizing the rebound. So, yeah. Hey Matt, please, I wonder if you can share some foot exercises for speed on single pedal, and if you use some technique as slide or whatever to achieve that. Please share the mechanics of those motions too. Sorry for my poor English. Greeting from Peru. Well, I have a lesson on the singles pedal, and yeah, I kind of go over sliding technique that I utilize, heel up. I mean, the mechanics of these motions, it's hard not to, can't really demonstrate here, but yeah, I utilize heel up because there's more power in heel up. You have the weight of your leg behind it. And I used to do heel down when I had a jazz teacher who was insistent that I do that and learn to feather the bass drum. And yeah, it's not my style. And, you know, it's maybe useful for that time, but heel up baby. So I basically have this massive list of all these things that I wanted to work on, and it would take 3 to 4 days to cycle through them. 2 to 3 days, sorry. 4 days is when I was like, yeah, this is not, the frequency is not often enough, and maybe I'm spreading myself thin. So, yeah, I mean, it definitely helps to manage your time on a very high level like that. But, yeah, I mean, just having that extra time, making that extra time is, I think, the biggest factor. Try to make a hierarchy too. That's my other piece of advice. Try to figure out what's the most important thing, what's the most pertinent thing for your survival as a musician, and the most pertinent thing for your spirit as a creative person. And then you kind of at least find a group of things that are, this is the bulk of what I want to do. And this other stuff is kind of added, like junk food, It's like I like chocolate, but I can't eat that every single day in vast quantities. So it's a supplemental thing. So find out what you want the core of your playing to be, and what is going to be best for your survival and your creative spirit, and all the rest is, snacks. All right. Will Ferrell says, "Hey Matt, how do you Will Ferrell? No, it's Will Ferry." All right. Will says, "How do you break away from playing the same old patterns? I keep reverting back to the 6-stroke roll and paradiddle variations." You have to quarantine yourself from using the 6-stroke roll and paradiddle variations. You have to try to cut those out of your diet and really implement these other patterns. You got to find other patterns. You got to find other patterns to love and to cherish with all your heart, and that's what you got to do. Simple. It's a ban from I now banish 6-stroke rolls and paradiddle variations from your vocabulary for a month, and you will have to find your identity without those patterns. And then after a month, go back and try to mix them up with the other new patterns that you've been working on. I recommend Flam Madness lesson, which is in the Kit Mobility Pack. That's got a bunch of different stuff in there that is not 6-stroke rolls and paradiddle variations. A bunch of single patterns too around the kit. Bunch of odd times stickings as well. So spice up your life with some inverted flam taps. When will Dirty D drop a full dong? You're assuming Dirty D has a full dong. Alright. John says, question. All of us, as we learn more difficult time signatures, such as 15/16, for example, work on counting to develop and ingrain it. Do you find as a band member that the concept of using particular odd time comes first, or is it more secondary as an identifier after jamming or developing certain parts and feels within the band, then saying, hey, that's a 1916, for example? Stay safe. Yeah, that definitely happens where after the fact, I can feel it first, and after the fact I'm like, oh, that's in 1916, I guess. But guess what? I wouldn't have learned these odd times most likely by feel. That's most people, if they're gonna naturally write a song, write a riff, it's gonna naturally be in 4/4. So the idea is to unnaturally obtain the ability to play odd times naturally. There it is. Keep working on it, and eventually it will become second nature, and you'll just write patterns and parts and things in odd times. That happens to me all the time now. Given, usually they're not in like 19/16 or 15/16, there's still a slated likelihood that it's going to be in 5, 7, 9, 6, something like that. Jesse has a relatively easy question, I'll say. How did you go about creating your 11/8 metric modulations for the performance of physical education in Dallas, Texas last year? Alright, this is a modulation that I often do in live shows. And what you first have to understand is what the physical education riff is. It is 16th notes. It's in 4/4, and it's a 2-bar phrase, so there's 32 notes total, and the groupings go 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, and all I'm doing is changing the 6s to 4s and changing the 7s to 5s. And when I say changing, I'm not playing them at the same rate as the 16th notes. I'm putting 4 notes within the space of time that 6 16ths usually happen. And then I put 5 notes in the space of the amount of time that 7 16ths tends to happen. And it's close enough that those rates, that ratio, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 is close enough where I can just bastardize it enough to where the 4s and 5s have a pretty consistent feel. And of course, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4 adds up to 22. So that's where the 11 is coming from that he's talking about. So yeah, it feels like 11/8. I'm looking to start playing and learning your music, particularly animals as leaders. I'm mostly self-taught and play a lot of Tool, Danny Carey, so I'm familiar with polyrhythms and odd time signatures. I've usually learned all my drumming through just playing to the music repeatedly and slowly building towards the final product, rather than studying the drumming note for note. I don't think this is as possible with the complexity of your drumming in music. So my question is, what steps and what would you recommend to do to build my way towards your style of drumming? Limb independence, speed, creativity, etc. I think it's paramount that you're developing your ear. I think that's absolutely essential. And playing to music and learning the pattern that way is definitely a skill set you need. And the only thing is that it can lack detail. You can miss out on details, and that's where the slowly building comes in, piece by piece, note for note. Reading definitely helps. If you can read music, you can build piece by piece, and if you're aware of every single note, I guess that's the general idea. Being aware of every single note and its placement, and having the abstraction of looking at a piece of paper and being able to see that. That's what reading is being able to see it. And if you see it, then you can say, hey, there's some space. I could fill that with maybe a couple 30 seconds and a 16th, things like that. And I'll be honest, building in that way is slow. It's not the most efficient way. That's why we predominantly use our ear in music. But this method can be honed in on, and the amount of time that it takes for you to consciously build patterns will, it's a learning curve. The better you get at that, the faster that process becomes. And, it doesn't mean that you're always operating from that place. You can use the technical and the conscious laying of each note down. You can use that process to teach your ear things, and then your ear goes, oh, okay, now I hear what it is. Now I can play it. That happens to me all the time. I'm like, what am I trying to do here? And I have to go to breaking it down. I have to basically outsource the issue that I'm having to the non-creative side of my brain, the managerial side of my brain, the side of my brain that decodes things, and then that side of my brain figures it out, and it gets to teaching my creative side of my brain what it is and teaching my musical ear, and then my musical ear can be like, okay, yeah, we see that now. We know what that is. So, yeah, I think reading transcripts is really good for that. Being able to control each note and consciously create in that fashion. When you're writing a drum part for a song, how much of the recording process is spontaneous/improvised? For example, do you play for a while till you find fills that work and play them every time from then on, or do you aim to play a certain idea each time but leave room for something about that idea to change each time you play it? I mean, this is all kind of up in the air. It can be any of these, really. Like, I can come up with a bunch of ideas on the spot, and then I'm going to reevaluate them after that fact and say, okay, what's the most powerful one? Or maybe the other guys in my band, they instantly recognize which pattern is the most powerful or most effective. So, and then details within that pattern can change over time. Sometimes I just find a fill that works and I don't deviate from it. It's just, for me, like there's one in we used to call it ramen, but now it's Inner Assassins. There's a fill in there that I play the same exact way every time. There's actually a couple, and it's because I think they're just like good preppers for the next section. So if I find something that's a really good prep that I feel like brings in that next section powerfully or elegantly, however I want to do it, if I feel it's really effective, then I'm probably gonna stick with that. But I'm liable to change those things and try to experiment because, the likelihood that I'll find a better one is maybe low, but it happens. So it's worth, that process is worth engaging in. Oscar, what is your recommended approach to progressing through all of your lessons, and are there any prerequisites or basic foundations a drummer needs to have before beginning your lessons? I've only purchased Mastering Time 1 and 2, blah, blah, blah. Well, my whole thing is kind of based off of intermediate and advanced players. So yeah, hopefully people have rudimentary, their rudimental foundations in place, and are able to kick a certain amount of grooves, and be able to read. That's kind of the prerequisite for my course material. But other than that, it's kind of free market, where you choose, man. If you want whatever you're most interested in. If you're interested in permutations, like taking grooves and shifting them over and hearing all the different placements and being able to have full control in that regard, that's get that lesson. If you're looking for an increased agility around the kit, then get the kit mobility pack. Universal function, that's a coordination lesson, and also helps with polyrhythms, hearing polyrhythms over the bar line. It's up to you what intrigues you most, but this material is not for beginners. Richard, I have this weird question about motivation. What kept you going in times when you may felt like you were not as good a drummer as other drummers? Because sometimes I'm watching drummers chopping, grooving, or whatever. I'm like, dude, what am I trying to do here? Please do a cover of New Life from Cosmic Liberty, because that stuff is dope. Dude, I've had those moments too, where cats just disintegrate my being. It happens in sheds sometimes, man. And sometimes I'm sure I do it to other cats. I often use the analogy that it's like trying to make a sculpture while the sun is melting it, while the sun is melting the clay or whatever it is. Because you're constantly trying to accrue these new skills, and at the same time, the skills that you haven't worked on in a while, those are going down. Those are reducing in potency or whatever. So you're fighting this uphill battle where you're trying to accrue and amass large skill base and facility. Dude, the best analogy that I have is to chip away at it every day. That's all you can do. Chip away at it every single day, and it looks like a mountain, because it is, but your life is a fucking mountain. You have a mountain of time in your life. You have a mountain, a wealth of energy. Like, think of, even if you only live till 30 years old, 60 years old, like, that's a lot of time. You also have to adopt a level of, okay, how long am I going to compete with these people and try to play the patterns they're playing, try to play the chops they're playing, yada yada, and that should be sustained for quite some time, because that's like your assimilation process, that's your socializing, that's your conditioning your self to fit in and to be someone that you want to be a player that you want to be. But then there comes a time when you need to be yourself and to really experiment with the things that interest you most and kind of isolate yourself. Yeah, man. Just do something every day, man. Something is better than nothing. Don't listen to, oh, well, you're not really doing that much. Even 20 minutes a day, man, is something. something. Been a big fan for a long time. It was a pleasure to see you with Animals Leader in San Francisco last year. I was wondering if you could break down the fill coming out of the bridge in Mind Spun. I love the hell out of that track and would really like to learn what exactly it is that you're playing. Oh, man. It's basically, I improvise that all the time. I never play that exact fill, note for note, live, and probably because I don't think it's that great. And I think I can do better, cooler, nastier shit live. But the exact performance is actually written out in the Joy of Motion transcripts. So if you want to head over to my website and get that, it's got every single note in there, every single splash hit, and whatnot. Tom, he has written me a novel. Okay, let's try to condense this. Basically, he's asked about comparing the benefits of just playing in personal practice time as opposed to structured practice time. Structured practice exercises. So this, I think, is the main duality that we have to deal with and balance as musicians and artists. And yeah, at times cats that never do structured practice become so different because of that, you know? But or cats can go the other way. I personally don't like that when a cat does so much structured practice and never plays. You can hear it, and it's stiff, it's rigid, sterile. So I personally think, you know, the majority of people, you know, and myself included, need to balance this. And for me, it's like kind of 50-50. And it used to be more structured practice. It used to be like 80% structured, 75% structured. But as I get older and I get more into my career and creative decisions, it's more pertinent for me to be playing and practicing more. And I've gained quite a bit of, you know, facility and different concepts creatively. So yeah, man, I think playing is absolutely essential, because it's one thing to acquire an idea, but to apply it in the moment is, or, you know, just learn how to apply it. That's definitely the biggest hurdle most people have to get over. It made people learn a paradiddle but don't know how to apply it and make it sound good. And yeah, it's just a paradiddle. I don't like paradiddles much, but you know, it can groove. And yeah, my point, I guess, would be that basically try to balance that. And for me, when I'm doing structured practice, I've noticed that my brain wants to go off on a tangent all of a sudden. And in my younger years, I would be like, no, I won't do that. I'm going to stay disciplined. I'm going to stay on course. But some of the most eye-opening moments and best moments of my playing were while I was trying to do structured practice. It's funny how that happens. It's like, you know, this force comes out of you and says, no, I have something to say. And it's only in the inopportune times. So as I've gotten older, I've learned to listen to that voice and allow those ideas to come to fruition. But also, it can be the devil on your shoulder. You know, if you're always trying to do structured practice and you have not gone through the process of staying disciplined and staying on the path that you had created for yourself, you can spiral down into just playing the same old stuff you usually play and not acquiring any new patterns or interesting things to say. So it's a delicate balance, and I personally think the structure portion of the practice should come first because, first of all, like I said, a lot of times when I'm trying to do structured practice, the improvised things or ideas just pop into my head. So, I try to get that out of the way first. I try to it's good because it calibrates me, sets me up to be in a position where I'm fully warmed up, fully calibrated. I have some pent up improvisation that I want to do, or pent up, creative expression. So that's my advice for that. But then he goes into this long thing about performance philosophy, and then which I was like, at first, what is performance philosophy? But I think what he's getting at is how one's personal philosophy affects their performance, which I think it absolutely does. Like I'm saying, there can be cats that are wild cards who just go off on improvisational tangents all the time, and you're like, I don't think this person's ever done structured practice in their life. And that's their who they are as a person. It's part of that. It's most likely part of their philosophy, part of their character, part of their makeup. So then he goes into, how do you feel in the practice space compared to how you feel live on stage? I mean, I've had some pretty incredible moments in the practice space, and I wished those were live. And I've had some pretty shit moments live that I wish were in the practice room. But I've also had the opposite. I've had, pretty shit days in the practice room, and pretty good days, pretty amazing moments on stage. So I would say, you're always going to have good and bad days. You just got to work every day to try to improve so that when you do hit the stage, the likelihood that you're having a good day is better. Or look at it this way, you're just trying to mitigate, should things really go south, it won't go below this level. It'll be sloppy for you, but maybe other people won't notice. Or they just totally won't notice, and they'll be like telling you how great everything sounded. So yeah, you just got to take it for what it is. I think the more that you're on stage, the more likely you're gonna feel comfortable there and be in a better headspace, because if you're never on stage and then you go on stage, it's going to take up a considerable amount of your CPU, and it's going to be a considerable distraction. So the more you can be on stage, the better. But also, don't just play out all the time because you want to get better at playing out. You also have to have something to say. So you have to spend enough practice time sorting out your concepts and what you want to present artistically. So it's a balance basically that you're trying to achieve of practicing personally and being on stage. And all you can do is try to remain calm and perform to the best of your abilities. Would your band, Animals as Leaders, ever consider using microtones in their music? The band is very experimental, and microtonality opens up a whole new world of possibility. That it does. I'm a big fan of Dave Fizinski. He does the microtonal thing, and I was actually one of his students. He was one of my professors in the microtonal lab at Berkeley. Shit's sick, but yeah, I don't see Tosin or Javier ever being into that. So I would say most likely no. Can you put up more rudiment exercises? Yeah, there's some. I kind of interweave them into other topics like kit mobility pack that has a bunch of odd stickings, rudiments in there, how to apply them to the kit. Mastering Time 1 and 2 both have actually a good amount of sticking stuff in there. One particular exercise from David Garibaldi, which is just doubles, and your hands remain playing doubles the entire time, and you're just shifting the accents that you're playing, which it sounds really simple, but it's actually pretty complex to get the consistency of rate while maintaining consistent accents in there. What else? I have universal function. That lesson has some hand stuff in there. I actually added it on afterwards. There's a sheet that basically you have different right hand ostinatos, and it's set up so it's applicable pad work, so that when you're working on a pad, you're not just playing linear rudiments that you can then not utilize in grooves. It's based on right hand ostinatos that you'll use on a ride or a hi-hat, and then left hand freedom, playing different rhythmic figures that you'll most likely play on the snare. Jake says, my question is, on the topic of creating a software instrument based on himself, D'Anthony Parks said in a podcast interview recently that our data is our wealth. Does this statement resonate with you, and how are you incorporating this perspective, if at all, into your personal praxis in music business as a soul trader, session drummer? Well, our data is our wealth. That's all I got here to work off of. Our data. Yeah, I guess you're referring to knowledge. Our knowledge is our wealth. Yeah, I mean, I bought into this idea. That's why I thought that by having a wealth of knowledge that I would be in a better position to create wealth for myself and not be a poor musician. And so far it's working out for me, but I don't think it's always the case. Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to sell yourself too. I guess be able to market your abilities, your art form, and I mean that's what D'Anthony's doing, creating a software instrument based on himself. So yeah, I mean, I would say artistry and is one aspect. The creative element and knowledge of your artistry is those kind of go hand in hand. Like doing research and to being a better musician, being learning technicalities of the craft, and then being able to market yourself. And I mean, yeah, I can get on board with our data is our wealth. We have Johnny. He says, how did you approach the concept of blending jazz fusion background with the Djent idiom? Your drumming is pretty much raw and full of dynamics in an, although controlled, very aggressive and attacky environment. So I thought you would be the best person to ask since I'm in the middle of figuring it out. Of course, nailing hands and kicks perfectly on click is crucial, but I think you should have more insight on the concept of sound and composition. Yeah, I mean, I've got a wide background. I like a lot of different styles. I like a lot of different things. So, of course, I wanted to inject that into the Djent background, if you will, the prog background. I honestly, or the prog context and animals as leaders. That's what drew me to fusion in the first place, actually, is that it's just mixing styles, which I think is essentially what Djent is. It's aggressive guitars that are metal guitars, and it's polyrhythms that you'd hear in like fucking Indian drumming or in, something not Western. And then you have, these progressions that are more like jazz progressions, and then you have like almost like screaming as well as, pop vocal, not pop, but, poppy vocals, like catchy melodies and riffs. I personally want to put more dynamics and musicality into the style, but I think it's undeniable the effect that the big snare hits and production can have. But yeah, it's just about finding that balance as a band. And I'd like to have it both, but I think it needs to slate. I think the genre needs to slate more towards natural stuff. Otherwise, everybody can just literally sit behind their laptop and create these songs with samples, and then we're no better than the pop guys. So, let's keep our one advantage that we have, guys. What else? He's got numbered ones. He's got do you give lessons through Skype or something like that? No, I don't right now. I haven't done that in years. I don't have internet where my drums are. I probably won't, but who knows with this COVID-19 thing. Let's see. Do you plan on coming to Greece ever again with animals? I mean, sure, yeah, as long as the borders open up eventually. In your new album, are you going to take things in a different direction in any way? You will have to find out, good sir. Are there going to be any Cosmic Liberty sheets? Probably not, bro. I'm going to be honest. Sheets, maybe little pointers, but as far as transcribing every single note, I mean, that's the hardest album that I've appeared on. That is the hardest material I've ever went for in my life. Yeah, I mean, I could transcribe it all. Oh, God. I mean, it's painstaking enough with the animal stuff, but this is kind of on another level. Probably not, man. Probably not. You probably won't see any Cosmic Liberty transcriptions from me. Can you contrast German grip with French grip on the drum set and their utilities? Speed, articulation, power. I've been a German grip player my whole life, but I played French technique on the ride on my right side. I have a great German grip for both hands and also a great French grip for my right hand. Is it worth my time to develop my French grip on my left hand as well, or should I just focus on the German grip? Honestly, yeah, I'm the same way. I'm pretty similar. It took me the longest time to really develop a fluid French grip. It was usually just on the pad. French grip is when your wrist is in this position. German is this. American is actually in between. So you can actually use part of your wrist and fingers. Whereas German is more wrist dominant. German's more wrist dominant. French grip is almost all finger dominant because you can't, you're not supposed to move your wrist this way. Sometimes it'll crack. So, yeah. I used to think of it in these two categories, like I'm either German or French or I'm American in between. And, I will say that most likely I'm going to be playing a French grip on the ride and a German grip on the snare, and my left hand is the least likely to use the French grip, but now that I've integrated these, I honestly think that movement around the kit is where you get into where you do need all three of these modalities, all three of these positions, because moving from a ride to a crash to a china to a floor, I mean, you have every possible movement from floor tom to hi-hat. Like, you are going to have to figure out which combinations, how much French grip to use in this particular pattern that you're playing. Yeah, so I'm just trying to think of everything nowadays, honestly. I'm thinking of my movement, making my movement fluid around the kit and from place to place. Yeah, and these kind of locked positions like hi-hat and stuff, it's like I'm less about that now, more about putting some play in there. But, it's probably essential that you get that foundation first. I know it sucks, but develop just your German grip first, just your French grip. And you need them both, bro. Let's see. My question, will you ever release a series breaking the drum parts you wrote on Kazimierz Libursky's? No. Actually, a series would be easier than writing out every single note, because I can kind of go over generally what I was thinking. I might, man. I've thought about it. I really have. If not, then can you break down one of your favorite parts and how it could be applied in the practice room? The whole album is bananas. Thanks, bro. Jordan. Thanks, Jordan. Banana nuts. Yeah. My favorite part is probably the solo at the end of 1997 Part 2. What is it? Strident Laser Shard. And it's the end solo. It's 6 measures of 4/4, or 96 beats total. The whole thing it's called 1997 because it's based off of a 7533, 75533, 755333, 755733. That's 97 beats. And for this end part, it becomes that's the whole beginning, is all that shit over the bar line. 97 over the bar line. And then this is, the end is a bastardized version where it's 96 beats, and that perfectly fits into 6 measures of 4/4 or 4 measures of 6. So I promptly used that to metrically modulate, for people's perception to change to hearing it as triplets, to hearing it as 6/8. And then I changed all the 7 5s and 3s to 2 3s and 4s, or 4 3s and 2s. And I did some other funky shit with that. I overlaid that. I kind of went back and forth. It's personally the most metric modulation heavy drum solo I've ever done. And it was pretty much all one take. I just got the right take, and so that's my favorite part. It was that I'd played to it for hours and hours and hours and hours, just improvising, coming up with different patterns, just really embedding it. So I wasn't like, 7/5/3. I wasn't thinking that by the time I recorded. At that point, I had already had it so embedded that it was just a phrase to me. So, and of course, the modulations are a little tricky. And you'll become more conscious in those, but yeah, generally speaking, it gets to a level where it becomes natural. You just gotta do it hundreds of times. So, that's my favorite part there. Matt says, John Riley used to say, one thing is to play an exercise, and another is to mastering one. At that point, you own it. How long it took you developed your vocabulary. Okay. He's saying it's one thing to play an exercise, it's another to master one. How long did it take me to develop my vocabulary? I totally agree with John Riley. Love him, by the way. Studied out of the Art of Bop books. Mostly the first one. That was the most crucial for me. Yeah, I mean, it's like with anything. It's one thing to be able to play an Animals as Leaders song. It's another to master it and to sound sick as fuck on it. That's a whole nother level. So, yeah, I'm very much a fan of kind of going back to these basic exercises and building on them and really building that foundation to be rock solid. And what you build that foundation on is up to you, bro. Could be double bass, you know? Could be straight 16ths, straight 30 seconds, straight triplets and double bass. That's it. You do it every day. It's like, yes, you are going to, that is going to be your cornerstone. That is going to be your foundation. Or it could be singles, doubles, hand stuff, you know, flam stuff. What I don't know. It's up to you, man. How long it took you to develop your How long did it take you to develop your vocabulary? My whole life. Yeah, I mean, obviously when I started out when I was 8, I didn't have much vocabulary at all. You learn beats. You don't learn how to groove, or you basically, or at least me, I was learning, oh, this is a reggae beat, this is a rock beat, this is a 16th hi-hat rock beat, this is, I don't know, man, it's never ending, you know, it's contingent upon, I mean, vocabulary is completely contingent upon what styles you're learning as well, what styles you're exposing yourself to. Yeah, it's endless. I like to steal from everything, man. I like to have like a wide vocabulary and see things from other contexts that I wouldn't, like from a hip-hop context coming through in like more of a progressive scenario, like braindance. Like, you know, I stole this one pattern from Justin Tyson. He's a motherfucker. Look him up, by the way. He's got this hi-hat pattern to it's it cat, it's it cat, it's it. Whereas his left foot is hitting that and. So don't sit, it's it cat, it's it cat, it's it. And yeah, so I stole that for braindance, and it's like, who would expect that to be in a, you know, classical, I guess, or acoustic tune that's from a prog band, and have some weird Dilla lag type hi-hat pattern over it, while 7 is cycling underneath, you know? So I kind of like that. Exploring different vocabularies, seeing how they come through. I would like to know how you develop your ghost note. Well, that time I developed the one ghost note that I had, yeah, it took years, you know, but when I finally made that ghost note, it was the most beautiful. Obviously you're saying ghost notes. I don't know. Lots of different exercises. Usually I'm right hand lead, and something happened when I saw Jan Hunter, a good friend of mine from Berkeley, badass drummer, badass keys player too, production cat. He was playing these patterns, and his left hand was doing triplets, like insanely fast, where I was like, how is this possible? I didn't know that was possible. And, you know, I'd seen some other cats with some serious left hands, and it's like, I see these cats that are right hand lead dominant, and it's like, why am I trying to make everything symmetrical when there's actually rolls here? Like the left hand is most likely going to stay on the snare, so like, each limb kind of has its own role, so why not go with that? Go with the roles, fall into the roles that each limb tends to play. And that kind of opened it up for me. So, doing a lot of patterns, playing motifs with the right hand, filling in with the left hand. And then once I learned that I could sub out right hands with right foots, it revivified that whole thing where I was getting sick of it, and it made it really interesting again and really challenging. And then putting it in a triplet context where, putting it in a triplet context made it more interesting, and it's just, keeps unfolding from there.